So recently I bought a set of old keys. Now these are supposed to be garden ornaments. They're like pre-rusted, pre-aged, faux rusted, faux aged if you like, and you're supposed to just hang them in your garden as a kind of decorative item. Now they should have been about £8, but I managed to get them for £2. So I thought, well, that's okay, that's like 50 pence each, you know, so cheap enough to be able to do whatever I want to with them. Now there were 4, but I've already painted one. So there you go, that's what I'm going to play with today. So I'm starting off with a canvas. It's a gallery wrap canvas. It's about 8 inches by just under 6, and I'm going to do it landscape, so I'm going to do it the long way. This is the Love Post stencil from TCW, and I'm going to grab some modelling paste by Winsor & Newton, or the Galleria one, and I'm going to grab a spatula, put a sizable dollop of the modelling paste on my craft mat, my glass cutting mat. I'm just going to pick some up on the knife, the palette knife, and then just scrape it through the stencil to give me some nice texture on the base and background of my canvas. And the great thing about modelling paste is that if you make a boo-boo like I've just done, you can just scrape it off and start again. So next, once I've cleaned off the excess on the edges, I want to add a little bit more detail in that top right hand corner. So this is the mini specimen stencil, again from TCW. I'm just adding some of the modelling paste on those butterfly kind of shapes, and I'm just going to drop those in the top right hand corner. I'm not bothered about the colour because I'm going to be painting over it anyway. So I'm just going to have a bit of a clean up, just clean off the excess from my mat, put it back in the pot because waste not, want not, and then just have a bit of a wipe around, and then grab my heat gun and then give that modelling paste a really good blast to make sure it's all nice and dry before I can move on to the next step. So once it's dry, I decide I want to add a little bit more stenciling to the bottom left and the top kind of central section. So for that I'm going to use the Letter Jumble stencil from Dilutions, and again just add some of that modelling paste just through the stencil along the bottom and in that section up at the top. And once I'm done, I'm going to bring the heat gun out and make sure it's nice and dry before moving on. Once it's dry, I'm going to put it to one side and grab this heart shape that I've had kicking about my craft room for a while that I thought I might as well use in this project. So again, I've grabbed that Letter Jumble stencil. I'm going to just apply some of that modelling paste onto that corrugated cardboard front of that heart shape. And because I need it nice and dry before I can work with it, I'm going to bring the heat gun out and give it a quick blast, and then I'm going to pop that to one side and then carry on working on the canvas. So next up I have a small Spritzer bottle. Now I think it comes from Stampin' Up, but don't quote me on that one, I'm not quite sure. I've had it in my collection for quite some time. And some Pheasant Bronze metallic acrylic paint from Indigo Blue. Now I'm just taking a little bit of that paint from the bottle in a pipette and just dropping it into the Spritzer bottle with some water. So just find it's an easier way to add paint from the pot in a small bottle like this. If it was a larger Spritzer bottle, I'd probably used a spatula, but the pipettes are really good for getting it into small places, if you know what I mean. So once I'm happy with the amount of paint in the bottle, I'm going to give it a good shake to mix up the water and the acrylic paint to create my own metallic spritzer. My hope here is that once the paint is dry, I'm hoping that it's going to be dark enough that I don't have to paint it. It's a kind of a tester. I've not spritzed using this pheasant bronze before, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to react. I'm also making sure that I get all 4 of the sides of the gallery wrap canvas too. Don't want to miss those out. So once I've spritzed all over the place, I can already tell now that it's not going to cover 100%, so I am going to have to add a little bit more colour direct from the pot. So I need to dry it off. So out comes the heat gun, give it a good blast, and then we can carry on. So now it's dry, it does have a nice metallic sheen to it, but it isn't dark enough for what I want. So I'm going to take some of the pheasant bronze acrylic paint, just spritz a little bit of water into it, and then paint all over the canvas. And of course making sure that I remember to paint the 4 sides too. So I'm much more happy with the coverage of that paint just by adding a little bit of water on my craft mat and then painting the canvas as it was. So time to bring out the heat gun because I need it all perfectly dry before moving on to the next step. And in between takes I ran downstairs, made a cup of coffee and then painted the hat as well. Sorry I didn't record that bit on camera. So this is the Ruby Slippers red metallic paint from Indigo Blue, and again I'm just going to mix a little bit of water to it, and then I'm going to just do a little bit of a wash of that metallic red paint over the top. I need to add some red tones into this bronze colour. So I'm happy with the heart, so I'm just going to add some of those red tones into the back of the canvas too. So when I'm happy with that red colour wash, I'm happy with the balance of the red and that bronze still showing through, I'm going to just bring out the heat gun and give it a good blast to make sure it's all nice and dry. Next I'm going to stick on the heart onto the canvas itself. So for that I'm using the super thick Slap It On gel medium from Indigo Blue. I'm just going to add some dollops onto the back of the heart, enough so I can bed it down, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the embossing or texture paste, it will still grab and hold. So I'm now just going to pop that to one side to allow that to sit and to dry naturally, and then that gives me time to work on the next embellishment, which is the key. So this is one of those 4 keys that I showed you earlier on, and I'm going to take out the Ruby Slippers metallic acrylic paint and just grab a brush, and I'm going to paint the key directly. I'm not going to add any gesso or anything like that, because these keys have got a faux paint, kind of rusty, metallic-y texture to them anyway. That metallic paint is just going to bond and grab onto it straight away. There's no need to gesso. But because the keys are a very dark colour, I'm probably going to need a couple of coats of this metallic paint before I'm actually happy with the colour balance and the colour depth. So that's what I'll probably end up doing, a couple of coats of the red. So after just 2 coats, I'm happy with the way the colour looks, so I'm just going to give it a heat blast for the final time, and then I can work on sticking it onto the front of my canvas. So once again, I want to use the super thick Slap It On from Indigo Blue, and I'm going to grab the spatula, just butter the back. Where the points are that I think it's going to touch the canvas, that's where I'm going to add that gel medium. I'm not going to cover it completely, I think that's a bit like overkill. So the beautiful thing about this super thick Slap It On from Indigo Blue is that it will bond heavy items like keys and that kind of thing onto a canvas. It's super strong as well as being super thick. So where the gel medium has squeezed out from underneath, once I've stuck it down, or once I've placed it down onto the canvas, you can see I've just taken a brush and I'm just gently brushing away that excess. The gel medium does go clear, but because I don't plan on adding any more paint to this, then I want to remove as much of that stuff that's squeezed out from the outside or from underneath as possible before it dries. But make sure you do clean your brush, because it will ruin it. So if left to dry on its own, just to air dry, this super thick gel medium will take probably about 25 to 30 minutes. But I always like to give it a bit of a helping hand with the heat gun. Just give it a blast for a couple of minutes, and that helps it on its way to start bonding and holding the key in place. And that's the same for any embellishments you want to stick onto a canvas using this gel medium. If you just give it a quick blast with the heat gun, it adds the heat into the gel medium, which then helps it to dry practically from the inside out. It's almost like microwaving it. So it's only been a few minutes and the key is already bonded enough for me to be able to add some gesso over the top. Now I want to try and tone down some of the colour. I know I've spent all that time adding that luscious metallic, but I now want to unify and tone it down and just give it a little bit more of a vintagey kind of shabby chic look. So I'm going to dry brush using the white gesso from Indigo Blue. So I'm going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes going all over the canvas with the white gesso. It is kind of a repetitive process because I'm going to keep on adding here and there, going backwards and forwards and adding and adding and adding, building up the layers of the white gesso, but it can be a little bit of a laborious and boring process to sit and watch, so I'll show you a few minutes of it and then I'll jump to the end where I've completed it. So as you can see, I've not gone too heavy with that white gesso. I've just added enough to pick out all the raised texture and just to add that kind of faded, aged look to it. So once I'm happy, I'm going to stop and then call that a day. So all I want to do now is just to add a little quote or a little title to it, and I've just chosen one of the phrases from the small talk stickers from Tim Holtz, and it just says, "Have an open heart," which I think is kind of apt. And then I'm done. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this mini mixed media canvas come to life. If you have enjoyed it, please remember to give it a thumbs up, as it really does help. You can share the video with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking that button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now.